At this point, you probably know about the disaster that was my Rings of Power watch party video with Lilith and Arch and Gibbs. I've been talking about it on stream for the past couple days. The quick TLDR is, no matter how I censored it, it kept getting blocked, looking a little something like this. I finally managed to butcher it enough that it was viewable on YouTube, albeit demonetized. So, if you feel like supporting the channel on Patreon or Subscribestar, I'd appreciate it. Also, it's entirely uncensored on BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble, if you'd rather see it there. That's okay though, I'm gonna keep doing them, at least until Rings of Power is done anyway. They're a lot of fun. Record Thursday night, upload Friday, why not? But floating around right now are the no hate watching memes, after it became known that Amazon is literally banking the future of Prime Video on the success of Rings of Power. And I understand that point of view. People are finally seeing a way to strike at the heart of some of the terminal woke rot in media, and it kinda feels like everyone's desperate for a win. But the cold hard truth is, no hate watching on its own isn't gonna be what solves this problem. Consider Star Wars. The new trilogy sucked, but they still earned a ton of money. Less than they should have, yeah, but all three still turned a profit. And yet, despite that, Star Wars as a franchise is in shambles now. What was originally a small set of once-in-a-generation releases have become run-of-the-mill and easily ignorable. Part of this is the sheer amount of stuff being pumped out, for sure. Restricted quantity can serve to make something feel special. And part of it is definitely low quality, but part of it is also the reduced trust in the franchise. This is what I meant when I said, I think a year ago at this point, that get woke, go broke is not a sophisticated enough analysis. Simply putting diversity hires into a property won't mean that it instantly tanks. In fact, it often doesn't. But sacrificing quality for politics does burn your audience, and once burned, they're far less likely to return again. This is a long-term failure. Getting to the point that the Han Solo movie was a box office bomb, unheard of for Star Wars, is going to first take several other bad Star Wars films that nonetheless bring in the cash. In order to reduce franchise trust to the point that the company actually starts to take financial damage from the lack of interest, the point where no hate watching is actually a viable tactic, the general public first has to get burned. They've got to stomach some god-awful shit. They've got to walk out of the theater thinking, that was a waste of my money, never doing that again. And that entails the studios making some money, at least in the short term. Unfortunately, we're not there yet with Prime Studios and the Rings of Power. Amazon is one of the biggest companies in human history. Over 200 million people have an Amazon Prime subscription across the planet. Not all of them watch Prime Video, obviously, but nonetheless, that's a huge base. If you decide not to watch the Rings of Power, that's fine, but Amazon doesn't care if they lose one viewer. What Amazon does care about, though, is the narrative surrounding the show. That is the lesson to be learned from the collapse of Star Wars. People leaving one-star reviews on IMDb, low Rotten Tomatoes scores, YouTubers talking shit about the latest film or episode. This is what led to normies losing faith in Star Wars as a property. Even with the god-awful prequel trilogy, when you saw that Star Wars logo, you knew you were in for a fun afternoon filled with spaceships and laser sword fights and heroes' journeys. But that trust is gone. Nobody thinks that way anymore when they see that another Star Wars thing is on the horizon. And it's because Disney lost the war over the narrative. What happened was, people who cared enough to write reviews or comment publicly did so. Not just YouTubers making videos or streams like me and many others, but also people who decided to leave reviews on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, or talk about it on social media. Those people who were willing to talk about their disappointment. And then, those who listened to them talk. That silent majority of people who watch videos or read reviews without ever commenting. Those people took the criticism with them. And then, those fans spoke to the normies. The people who aren't online at all, watching YouTubers or reading reviews. In between classes at school, or around the water cooler at work, normies would ask, what's that new Star Wars thing like? And people like you told them, don't waste your time, it's garbage. The normie then thought, oh yeah, the last one I saw was also shit, wasn't it? And then that became the prevailing narrative. That is the true power we have. Not to boycott, though boycotts absolutely have their place in a consumer revolt. But we have the power to set the cultural narrative through critiquing the thing itself and making that critique known to others. And Amazon did take note of that lesson that Disney learned the hard way with Star Wars. After we recorded that watch party of Rings of Power, Gibbs tried to write a negative review on Prime Video itself, only to watch in real time as his review was deleted. I also took these screenshots from him, thanks pal, of how on other movies or shows, Amazon is fine with displaying the average review score, but not on Rings of Power. Instead, it just says top 10 #1 in the US. Amazon owns IMDb too, so it's no surprise that they've suppressed negative reviews there. The average score is 6.6 out of 10, and you can see that there's a lot of 10s and a lot of 1s. But if you go to the reviews themselves, you'll find that all of the 1s are missing. You can read the positive reviews, sure, but if you choose to filter for only the 1-star reviews, suddenly there's nothing there to display. IMDb is purposely blocking people from reading any review lower than a 6 out of 10 for the Rings of Power. And it's not like this is a secret that they're trying to keep covered up. Amazon is deploying its own anti-troll weapons to protect the Rings of Power. Prime Video has instituted a 72-hour review delay to screen out the most vocal and potentially bad faith critics of its Lord of the Rings show. Of course, anyone who dislikes the show is a troll. We all saw this coming, right? When we saw the original first look of Rings of Power back at the start of the year, and it looked awful, and we learned that Amazon had a $1 billion price tag attached to it, anybody with their head on straight already predicted what was going to happen. We all knew that it would suck. We all knew that they would suppress reviews. And we all knew that their justification for the suppression of reviews would be that those bad reviews were written by trolls, or even worse, by racists. All of the true fans would love the show, but all the critics wouldn't be true fans, but reactionary, Gamergate, man-baby, racist, trolling Russian bots. It's been like this since 2016, you should know the score by now. As a quick aside, it's pretty funny just how poorly Amazon treated what they consider to be the actual fans, the people they invited to their pre-screening. The premiere in London has been a disappointment. Anyone sad they can't make it, you're missing nothing. We're crammed into cramped pens, being asked to cheer on cue, with no speakers so we can't hear the audio and no idea what's happening. We can barely hear anyone, and it's hot, and no water's been handed out. We aren't allowed to leave or we won't be able to watch the screening. Several people have just sat down near the back of our pen, where the cameras can't see them. We've been trapped here for 2.5 hours now. It's starting to rain. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to get to see the first 2 episodes a few days earlier on IMAX Cinema, but this premiere has been an absolute shit show. Anyone else in Fan Pen 4, I love you. We will all survive, I believe in us. Here's another one. After winning 2 tickets to the world premiere, I expected to go to a red carpet event, see the cast, and get to share a large room with the creators behind the show. In reality, I was used as a human prop, made to stand and cheer on people I didn't know, without being able to hear a word they were saying, for 3 damn hours, with no seats, then going into a screen with only fellow competition winners. There was a pointless applause at the end, as there was nobody that worked on the show there to hear the applause. Jesus. Imagine whoring yourself out to Amazon, only to be treated like this, in the service of probably one of the worst shows to come out this year. At least if you're an actual whore, you get laid. Rotten Tomatoes scores look to still be about accurate. High critic score, low audience score. Exactly what you'd expect when Amazon pushes out a turd. The corpos flock to it, and the average Joe rejects it. But not all corpos. The show is enough of an insult to the Lord of the Rings that more mainstream publications are also posting criticisms of it. In fact, Jeff Bezos' son asked his dad to ensure that the Rings of Power wasn't a disaster, and he sent the showrunners his notes, only to be ignored. The people involved in the making of the show on the ground have no problem confirming that it is indeed about identity politics, saying we're telling the story now. Meanwhile, Peter Jackson was ignored in order to push this new vision. Like I said before, this series of events should sound familiar to anybody who's paid attention for the past decade. In any case, if you want to hate watch, go right ahead. Fire up your current favorite torrent application and give it a go. Not giving Amazon money won't affect them, but it's better than giving them money, that's for sure. But what really matters is that you leave accurate negative reviews. They can't be inaccurate, because then the simps and the corpos can dismiss you out of hand for not knowing what you're talking about. Then you actually are a troll. But if you have coherent arguments, then you can't be ignored. And it's far more important that your voice reaches the normies, who don't know anything about any of this terminally online woke nonsense. There's a lot more at stake here than just the Rings of Power as a single TV show. Amazon wants to use this as a springboard to turn the Lord of the Rings into a perpetually producing franchise, like Star Wars or the MCU, at the expense of the quality of the thing or its fans. They don't care about the artistry of it, they care about the franchising. This is the moment where we want to wreck the reputation of the new series, right when it's just starting to take off. If the show is bad, and it is, that needs to be the eternal albatross around the franchise's neck. Currently, every time a normie thinks Lord of the Rings, they think of the Peter Jackson films. They remember having a good time, and so they're willing to give the Rings of Power a shot. That's an impulse that we need to work against. Amazon knows all of this. It's why they're trying to suppress it. Hiding negative reviews for 72 hours isn't coincidental. The show came out last Thursday. If your normie coworker or friend hears that there's a new Lord of the Rings out, they've probably already checked it out over the course of the weekend. By the time this video comes out, on Monday, it's already too late for episodes 1 and 2. So what we need to do is set the narrative around this show. If in 5 years' time, the Rings of Power is talked about the same way that Star Wars episodes 7 to 9 are talked about right now, then we will have done our jobs. So, let's get to it.